Hello YouTube, Candyman here, and welcome to another video. Today this will not be discussing Dead by Daylight just by itself, but a few other games such as R6 and Apex Legends, and that there's troubles going on with each game. Two involving gameplay issues, the other involving something else entirely, and it's rather more irritating than just game issues. To start off, we're going to be talking about Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight released its current chapter, Chapter 27, Tools of Torment into Dead by Daylight. And what happened was completely disappointing. Many were super excited for it. And what ended up coming out was something else. So in the trailer, we get to see a skull and mechanical parts, and such as blueprints, computers, kind of symbolizing that there's a possibility that there's going to be a cybernetic killer. But instead, we get something else entirely that was completely unexpected. And I did not want to be very harsh about it. I wanted to stay optimistic about the killer and everything, but yeah, no, I just can't do it anymore. It was really bad. Even others can agree that it was really bad. Even by the king himself confirming this to be the worst chapter in Dead by Daylight. And he tries to stay optimistic as well, but it's just too hard to ignore it, even for the knight. Because at least with the knight, his Mori animation was incredibly good and his sound animation was good as well. On other word, it just felt like with the Skull Merchant was incredibly bland, and it was trying to copy off Freddy, and that was just all that was terrible. And not just that, but the perks were awful too. They just made no sense at all to what it was aiming for. A few other problems is the eruption nerf, the lore, and the killer's power. For those of you that are asking me why am I talking about eruption, well, Eruption got nerfed over time killed. And for those of you who are going to say, Incapacity was overpowered. I was not going to be talking about Incapacity. It's understandable that you guys do not like Incapacity and nobody else does when solo queuing. But that's not what I'm aiming for. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the regression. For those of you who know, in the live service right now, is that it regresses the generator by 10% when it explodes after the killer kicks the gen and it goes off when the survivor goes down. But in the PTB, it was replaced with 10% of the generator's current progress being regressed, which is absolutely awful, and it just sucks so bad. It was pretty awful. And so let me do this with you mathematically. It sounds good on paper, but when you actually get to read into it, it's something that you rather never want to use. So let's consider this. 50% of a generator is being completed, and eruption goes off. Divide that by 10 from 50, then you only get 5% of it gone. Do this with 10% and you only get 1% regression out of that generator, and that's it. As for the killer's power, it is incredibly underwhelming to how weak it is. So what it does is it's basically a drone that gets left behind. Survivors that are in it get revealed, and the killer can look at this radar and check the location nearby. It sounds good on paper, but in chase it is very weak. And although it can expose him and get the killer undetectable, it still won't be good enough in a chase, and people can just loop this killer around forever and just never get it down. And back to when I was saying about the lore, it just felt very bland. Like, it could have worked so much better. There could have been much more work into it. There's like a part in the lore where you just read it and you can see that she's just really cocky about things. So she just wants things a little too much. Like, she just wants and doesn't really have a good reason to let things go. Like, when she got dropped out of high school for a bit, but came back, she wanted to be at the top of her class all the time. But this one person, this one boy, ended up surpassing her because she had to leave. She ends up stalking them, and she doesn't even kill them, strangely enough. And it's just rather, all I'm saying is that the lore can use some better work on. Up next, we're going to talk about R6. So R6 had a pretty bad year with defenders like Solus and Azami. It was pretty good. Like, they changed the meta quite much. But that's not what I'm aiming for, that it was a bad year. It was a bad year for attackers entirely. So if you take a look, the attackers are fairly weak. And the two attackers being Grim and Sense. Since it's a roll-around gadget that deploys a barrier that meant to cover up what anyone seeing on the other side, especially on the attacker side, no matter what end you just can't see through. And the problem with this gadget is that it bounces around, it's very unpredictable. And I mean very unpredictable, and it's just far too unplayable. And when she came out, she was a one-piece, so she was pretty awful. Her weapon was also trash. Like, I mean absolutely horrendous. Like, the gun looked so promising, but then when you actually get to try it, the recoil on the weapon was just completely garbage. And Grim did not make things any better as well, as his gadget was a kunai launcher, which allows you to launch a hive of microscopic bees, like robotic bees, to go around and end up live pinging any defender that goes inside it. And when they leave, they get pinged for a couple of seconds. It's not that long of a duration compared to Jackal's ability, but it's fairly short. And it sounds good, but when you actually try it, it has such a short detection range. Trying to do so is kind of obsessively weak. And when I say obsessively weak, I mean it just doesn't really get that much pressure at all, especially if you gotta shoot it and place it somewhere inside the room. Like, you have to have line of sight of where you want it to be. And it also gets worse with like cheaters and everything on R6, especially on console, which caused a lot of people leaving due to XM cheaters. And it's fairly unfun. It's extremely unfun, and it's just not at all good in any sort of way. For Apex, I'm going to keep this fairly short. So basically, it's not game design, like it's alright, it goes good, the balance is not that harsh, like it's not all bad, but it's mainly due to the issue with the esports skins. The esports skins ended up getting cancelled around. For some reason, it was not really clarified, until someone on Twitter actually posted out, and this has not been confirmed, but apparently what has been happening is so Respawn and EA have given them $60,000 if they happen to join, but this is where it gets very, very cheap with EA, is apparently while they get $60,000, like each of the teams, they will get 0% interest whenever a player purchases their skin. Done. And this is basically stealing from them. And what I mean by stealing, like, I'm saying $60,000 is nothing compared to how much people online are going to pay for them. And do know, there's hundreds and thousands of players, in terms of thousands. And that is a lot. Over 100,000 players. Possibly even more. Probably nearly to 1 million. And this is what really sets people off. It's just how cheesy EA is going to rip them off, and it's fairly understandable. It's not being greedy at all. It's just really the fact that EA is going to get more money than their own gamers. Like, what are they going to play their game for? What is it for? They have been playing with their game for a long time, and this is how they get ripped off. And it's fairly disappointing. So I do believe EA is in the wrong here. A lot. Now we're reaching to the conclusion. So for the conclusion, it's going to be between 1 and 3. 3 being the lowest on which game is going to get their chances of making a comeback. 1 going to be the highest chance of making their comeback. And for 3, it's going to be Apex having a low chance. So far, they have not done anything to fix up the mess they've done, from having their esports skins being cancelled due to issues with licensing and all that. It just feels like EA got greedy on that, and it's their fault for that, and they really should be taking responsibility. For number 2, I'm going to give this to Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight has a better chance than Apex to getting a comeback, mainly due to the fact that this is chapter 27, and it's about to be their 7-year anniversary. Possibly being a license, or it could be original again. But maybe this anniversary chapter won't come out as much of a disappointment. Maybe it'll actually be something that we can actually enjoy, even though it may not be cyber-like at all. That's all I'm just going to say. Despite this being a disappointing chapter, there is still potential for Dead by Daylight to make a comeback. And for number 1, it is going to be obviously the one game I've not mentioned yet, R6. R6 just announced their whole plan for year 8, And it's incredible, especially that the newest hacker is actually not at all garbage. She is actually good, and her name is Bravo, and basically she has a drone which goes around and it can hack Defender gadgets, which is incredibly powerful as it will turn the tides against them. This can hack Valk cams, Defender cams, Maestro cams, Echo cams. This not only cams, but also traps as well, like Cap cans or Thorns, which is going to make her very powerful. There's going to be the shield rework, which is also amazingly powerful as well. It's going to be really good, and I'm going to keep one of the reworks out of this, but another rework is to Consulate, which is a really good change, because Consulate is a huge map, and it's kind of annoying, and it feels like sometimes it's attacker sided, for me it's like that, and sometimes it's defender sided, and it's rather just go in between. And other than that, there is a lot of potential, especially with the arcade mode, and this will be permanent. A permanent arcade mode. So other than that, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe if you want more. I'm about to post another video soon, and I hope to see you all in the next video here in recommendations. Goodbye.